Hello and welcome to the In-Depth Insider, our quarterly forum to discuss issues of interest to the airline industry. I'm Scott Hunt, and today I'm joined by Chris Bird, Chief Architect for Sabre Airline Solutions. And he's going to join us as we talk about some of the ways that technology is impacting the airline industry. So Chris, you know, in the last few years, it's been a time of great change in the airline industry. Mm-hmm. And what are some of the ways that you've seen technology enable some of those changes?
Sure, and starting really at the most basic level, the advent and the rise of the search engines and the meta search engines put a tremendous toll on back-end systems. The look-to-book ratios have gone through the roof, and fortunately, technology has kept pace with that. Moore's law works, and so our processor speed does double about every 18 months, and we're able to really keep up with the pace of search and the pace of access to back-end systems. So that's goodness. But I think there's some other areas that we really need to focus on and to look at. Perhaps the most important of those is the change to, or the rise of the low-cost airlines and really the redefinition of the business processes, the advent of new forms of incidentals that can be bought on planes, on flights, the new general merchandising services, the new forms of customer interaction, just really the changing of the model. Behind the operational side of that, there's the technology side. And so a lot of technology solutions have had to change in order to accommodate just these new kinds of processes, new kinds of approaches. It's very hard to do on a standardized single solution. So we've had to change the way we think about our technology platforms to enable these new business models, these new ways of thinking. And that's really led us to a kind of a perspective on openness that ensures that we can take what are essentially the same core services, the same core capabilities, and rearrange them to suit the business process of the airline a little better. So it's really about openness, about ensuring that we can interoperate amongst different software components. And if I do a little contrast here between interoperability of the past and interoperability now, that we've had a lot of airline standards, a lot of industry standards for sharing point-to-point messages. So the GDSs can communicate with each other because we have standard message types, and that's great. But what we haven't had so much is standardization kind of within and around the applications. So we can't just plug in a different application to do loyalty or a different application to do a customer value score into an existing environment, because there are no standards around how those messages should flow. So messages between and among airlines, across the GDSs, across the CRSs, terrific. But standardization of message types kind of around low-level functionality in the applications is something we haven't done as well yet, and that's probably the direction that we're going in.
So Chris, in your role as Chief Architect, you see kind of the marriage of business strategy and technology. So what are some of the things that an airline should look for when it's considering choosing technology?
Sure. I think, as I was talking earlier, conformance to standards, making sure that you have an ability to use open standards where they exist to interoperate amongst your software components. And if I turn that background to the vendor perspective just for a minute, I think it's really important that we, the vendors, compete on excellence of implementation and not in lock-in into something proprietary. So we should agree to communicate using a standard set of interfaces, a standard mechanism, and then compete perhaps on what we do behind those standards. So our algorithms, our database designs, our schemas, our choice of technology and technology costs, all of those things provide us the ability to compete, but agreeing that we're going to at least speak the same language. We're going to speak XML to each other. So it's kind of an odd marriage, because on the one hand we want to be open, we want to be able to interoperate, but we also want to win. And so we win on our technology and we agree on a mechanism for communication between us.
How do you see operational data? What kind of role do you see as it?
Oh, it's huge, huge. Again, we've been in an industry where stuff happens in real time a lot, and yet we sort of know about it by looking in the rearview mirror. And what I'm excited about, and particularly with our Colidris acquisition, the ability to work on particularly on passenger data in real time or close to it, so that we can see the trends, see what's happening, see what value, if you like, our customers can get out of looking at their operational data in something close to operational time, rather than in something that looks more like the rearview mirror.
Thank you, Chris, for joining us today to share your insights.
Thanks, Scott, for having me.
We also thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to read more about this or other topics, we invite you to read the rest of the Insider newsletter. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to wearelistening@sabre.com. We'd also like to invite you to join us for our first moderated Twitter discussion, which will be at 14:05 UTC on June 9th, where Chris and others from Sabre Airline Solutions will be discussing topics related to the airline industry. And you can join us by using the hashtag #AirlineChat. We hope you'll join us then.